people rather keep quiet than avoid people shunning them, avoiding them. So in inclusion, we are trying to achieve a point in time whereby we can talk about sickle cell to the extent that people feel comfortable. My name is Sharifu Kiragga Tusuubira. It means we hope.
Yes, we can, sure we can change the world.
Welcome to the YALI Voices Podcast, your home for sharing the best stories from the Young African Leaders Initiative Network. Be sure to subscribe to the YALI Voices Podcast and visit yali.state.gov to stay up to date on all things YALI. YALI Mandela Washington Fellow Sharifu Tusuubira is indeed hopeful. As Executive Director of the Uganda Sickle Cell Rescue Foundation, he has made promoting awareness and communicating effectively about the disease one of his primary ambitions in life. Education, credible information, and exposure are key. Born with the disease, he knows firsthand the pain that not only comes with living with sickle cell, but also how the misperceptions, rumors, and stigmatization from others were obstacles in his journey. For Sharifu and others like him, the obstacles often start at home.
Okay, so I was born with sickle cell disease. So being born with sickle cell, I think my mother probably had no idea that it was sickle cell, but at about 1 year and a half, she found out I had sickle cell. So at that point, my dad divorced her because he knew that the baby has sickle cell and probably she doesn't want to be with her because she'll give birth to sick kids because probably I was getting sick often. It's so common to find people who have sickle cell frequently ill. So that's how my journey with sickle cell started. So growing up, I would see her cry most of the time. No, I don't know why she used to cry anyway. I've never asked, but I'll see her cry most of the time. But I think it could have been because I was either ill and she was worried I was going to die. In most of the cases while I was growing up, you'd go out to play with kids and they're like, no, Tom, they'd say, I don't know if I can speak it in my local dialect, but can I speak in the local dialect and translate into English? So they would say, temuzanya na yewe mulwadde. You're like, do not play with him, he's sick. Or he cannot play such, he's sick. So in a way, as a child, you feel left out when you come to play with friends, and they can't play with you because you're sick. And so that's how but the journey with sickle cell had been for me as a child growing up. In high school, at some point, for one of the schools, people would not want to share utensils with me just because probably I had sickle cell. But it's a fact that they didn't know. There's a belief that sickle cell is contagious, so no one would want to share a cup or a bottle of water with you or anything something edible. They'll not want to do that because they would worry that probably you're going to make them sick as well because you're already sick. So when I got to university, I had this very nice lady I liked, and no one knew I had sickle cell because I had not fallen sick. So when I felt sick when I felt sick, so everyone knows Sharifu is sick, he's in hospital. So I came back like, what's wrong? I'm like, no, I have sickle cell. So it's often normal that we get sick and get hospitalized. So our relationship ended there. She's like, no, you know what? I can't continue with you. You have sickle cell. It's not something I've seen in my life or I want to be associated with. And that was my turning point to probably engage in sickle cell advocacy. So sickle cell per se is a genetic blood disorder. It's a blood disease that is inherited when two people, a mother and a father, who are carriers of this gene come together and give birth to a child with sickle cell. So scientifically speaking, every pregnancy will have a 1 in 4 chances of being a child who either sickle cell, that is SS, or trait, that is AS, or normal, that is AA. But there are times I would be in pain actually, and the easiest thing that you could think of would be probably can you get a knife and I just cut off this hand or I cut off this leg, because probably the pain is so much. What happened in sickle cell when why we call it sickle cell is the fact that it affects the red blood cells. So when the red blood cells are affected, they're not the normal crescent or donut-like cells that they should be, but they are moon-like. They're like the crescent moon. So being like the crescent moon, they can easily clog or hold together, and when they hold together, they block blood vessels, and this causes pain, very excruciating pain. I mean, it causes a lot of pain. On top of pain, it causes complications like organ failure. It causes complications like physical disability because you can't use the body part. The part has been deprived of oxygen, so the part has died off. So those are some of the things that find. So if you combine the pain that you have already, you because being in pain, you have this feeling that no one understands because probably you're crying, you're trying to say this, no one can get what you're feeling. Even anyone who has been in pain, even a minor headache, you feel like any little thing is making you irritated. But this is a lot of pain. This is very excruciating pain. And then if you combine it with feelings of being isolated, so it's not, it's a very bad personal effect. So it does take a lot of courage. And as a child, I had this feeling. I knew that people around me think I'm going to die. So to me, this, I think, the good thing it gave to me, it gave me a lot of positive motivation and a lot of courage to excel and do what I do. So this pushed me probably in school to try to see if I can excel, to do the things beyond the limits people expected, just because of the conscious awareness that everyone around you views you as somebody who's incapable, or somebody who's going to die, or somebody who they don't see as being productive as enough. So that has been one of the motivating factors to probably even the advocacy work that I'm doing right now, to challenge the norm or the thought that people probably have about sickle cell. So sickle cell is mainly an awareness disease. Why am I saying an awareness disease? It's because what fuels it is people not being aware. And because people are not aware, this creates a lot of misconceptions and beliefs. I can give an example. Sickle cell was discovered, probably the first sickle cell person was discovered 106 years ago in the US. But we had sickle cell in Africa because this was a black American man from Sudan, African American man from Sudan. But in most of the African tribes, sickle cell has no local name. This means that there's a lot of denial that there's something going on in the tribe or in the society, but if it has no local name, then we don't talk about it. Because if we talk about it, then it has a name. But because the tribes don't have a local name, then it means there is this inherent denial that people don't talk about it. They know there's something here, but people do not want to talk about it. I'll give a case in point in Uganda. In Uganda, we have Uganda Kingdom. This is the biggest kingdom in Eastern Central Africa. This year, we had a campaign where we worked with the king so he could accept to make sickle cell awareness the theme for his birthday run. And through bringing that to attention of the king and the chiefs and people around him, the kingdom did give sickle cell a name. This in 2006. A disease that has been around and affected so many people in the kingdom, but this is just to show you the denial that is existing in our cultures. So because there's this form of denial, there are lots of misconceptions. The first misconception is people think that sickle cell is curse. It's a curse or it's a spiritual issue. So it means that if I have sickle cell, then the belief is this woman has given birth to a sickly child. She's probably a bad woman, or she's cursed, or all the kids are going to be cursed. That's where issues come in. That's where the main problems come in. On top of that, sometimes on top of the curse, there's this belief that probably bad blood. So you see that family has bad blood. They have somebody who's always sick. That brother up there is always sick every after 2 weeks. So it's not a good family to associate with, maybe to marry there or to be friends with. So that's one of the misconceptions. The other misconceptions that still exist regarding sickle cell, there's a belief, especially in the country, in Uganda, where I'm from, when somebody is born with sickle cell, people automatically give you a date of death. Normally, no one knows their date of death, right? But with sickle cell, people will tell you, this baby has sickle cell, you have to be careful. This baby will likely die at 5 years or even before 5 years. I don't know if he makes it past 5 years. He will not make it past 8 years. Now he's 8 years. I don't know. We worry he will make it past 15 years. Oh, he's 15 years. Oh, he has come a long way. We are really worried. We don't think he will make it past 20. So this is the kind of norm that happens. People ascribing to the extent that when people hear this, especially some parents, they'll not take their kids to school because they'll worry, I'm spending my money on him. I think he's going to die. So why would I spend money on this sick child or who's always in hospital? While the other children are actually normal. But the fact is, having sickle cell, you should be a normal person. It's all about the person having sickle cell, having an understanding of my body and myself, even the family understanding of how best do I take care of myself to be a normal person. Because through that, we see people who have sickle cell can work, can be productive to society. But because of that lack of awareness, people will not take kids to school because they think they're going to die.
Before founding the Uganda Sickle Cell Rescue Foundation, Sharifu was a volunteer on another project meant to raise awareness and understanding of the disease. It was when he and his colleagues organized an event for those interested in knowing more that he saw the potential for real impact.
So when we pulled up the event, that's where the thought of now starting a law. When people came, the conference hall literally was packed up with sickle cell people. People who are literally sick, and you could see that everyone, it was the first time people could feel the fact that I'm not alone in this world. I've always been feeling alone, but these are thousands of people seated in one hall. We all probably, because in my country, because of what happens to sickle cell, people even have a belief that people with sickle cell look alike. So they're like, no, but you don't look like them. Are you sure you have sickle cell? I don't think you don't look like them, because that's another way of showing you how the society has labeled people with sickle cell. There's this belief that they should be very slender, have very yellow eyes, have a very pale appearance. There's a very, I don't know how I can paint a picture for you to have an understanding of how people think that people living with sickle cell would be. But in this case, this was a whole 3,500 people sitting in the same hall, literally to them looking alike. If any of the people who had such a belief came to that place, would think, are all these people related? But so from that point, when so many people came together, the question was, what would you do now for us? You have called us here, you've told us all this thing about sickle cell, you've told us there's a cure. No one literally in Uganda at that time was talking about bone marrow transplant. So we said, no, there's a cure, so for those families that can afford. And I'm happy to say, since then, every month at least, I'm aware of one family that goes to India or whatever for bone marrow, because we talked about it. So that was the turning point, and that's where the idea to start up Uganda Sickle Cell Rescue Foundation was born. So what do we hope to accomplish with the Uganda Sickle Cell Rescue Foundation? When we started in 2013, the first thing we did was to train sickle cell counselors. Why counselors? From my own personal experience, I do know that, maybe I didn't get any mental issues, or even I had mental issues. I don't know. Maybe I was depressed at some point, or I would just overcome my depression. But the biggest need was to offer psychosocial support to the people affected and to the families affected. Because if we are going to change the way society views a disease or a condition, we need to start by changing ourselves as people who have sickle cell. So what do I mean by changing ourselves as people who have sickle cell? There's a big problem for disclosure. So many people, back home in Uganda, so many people do not want to say I have sickle cell. They literally can easily say I have HIV than saying I have sickle cell. I'm not saying that HIV is bad, no, but what I'm saying is a lot of work and awareness and all this has been done towards sickle cell, towards HIV. So someone will feel comfortable saying I have HIV. So people, he has HIV. I think that's okay. No, that's pretty okay. Than someone saying, I have sickle cell. Because people be like, what? You have sickle cell? Oh, what's your age now? 26. We hope you can make it to 30. You've come so far. We look forward to you making it to 30. So that's one of the biggest issues. So this was to do with awareness, psychosocial support and awareness. At 23 years, I decided to get married. So I found a lady. I told her I wanted to marry her. And I told her I had sickle cell. But what happened was, she told me later when she went home and told her mom, this guy wants to marry me. When she said, I have sickle cell, all her family members started crying. Her siblings, basically sisters and the mom, everyone was crying. But just to show you the kind of perception all people would have. So awareness is one of the things we are trying to do and we are trying to make, because sickle cell is literally an awareness disease. One of the things we are working to achieve is to make sure we have inclusion of people living with sickle cell. Such that if I have sickle cell, I don't feel like I'm being isolated from my own family, because a lot of the time stigma starts from the family. So one of the things we do is family empowerment through the foundation. So empowerment in terms of two aspects. Because families hide their sick. Why do they hide their sick? Sometimes they fear that when people know so-and-so has sickle cell, then her sister will not be married. because of all these social things in society. Like, so we're better off hiding her or not taking care of her when she's sick, so people do not know that we have sickle cell in the family. So this causes several complications. People become lame. I myself, I was disabled for quite some time. I had to use crutches for quite some time. But one of the things that happened is when people hide their sick for the fear of what society is going to label them, or society is going to perceive them. So in a way, we try to work with families such that they can feel comfortable and disclose and say, yes, so-and-so has sickle cell. So one of the key things that's important, so because ignorance is one of the is one of the things that is propelling the sickle cell burden. So the biggest need has been to create awareness about sickle cell. In terms of awareness, what do I mean? We want people to understand that when we say blood disease, you can know that it's not like HIV, that I'm going to contract it, but I was born with it. But we are talking about inherited in terms of if it flows in the family line. Family line means like the way, in terms of, we give examples for height. Some people, their families, they are light-skinned. The whole families know this genetic thing. That family, people are light-skinned. In this family, it's genetic. People are tall. Or it's genetic. People in this family are short in terms of height. So in a way, we give such examples for people to be able to understand when you talk about genetics. So they'll not say, no, this disease for us on our side, we don't have it. It's you, the woman who brought it. Is because we find in societies, there's a lot of blame game. Husband said, no, this woman is the one who brought this disease in my home. So because they don't understand in terms of the genetics behind it. So the biggest thing is to make sure people understand the genetics, that you can relate to the same thing like height, to the same thing like the skin color, to the same thing like sickle cell. That's one of the biggest things for understanding. When it comes to the effects that it has on somebody's life, or in terms of pain, we give an example of a gutter, of a gutter on a roof. When you have trees at home and leaves fall in the gutter, when it rains, water will not flow in the gutter because the leaves will be cluttered. The leaves will be holding together in the gutter, so they block the water flow. So this is the same example we give for blood vessels. When these cells that are crescent shaped, when they hold together and they clutter, they have higher chances of sticking together. This will block the blood from flowing. So in a way, someone can relate. Yes, I have a gutter. Okay, I see that. That's the way it blocks. Then they can easily understand the way these cells definitely block. So the next thing would be, how do we make somebody understand the pain? Like when the blood has blocked, remember blood is what transports oxygen, the nutrients, and all the good things in the body. If it cannot get to a point, it means that the body parts that have been cut off from that blood supply obviously will not be fine. Yes, are going to move out of their normal state. Yes, so this is where the complications come in. The pain, the disability, the organ failure, and all other retinopathy, blindness, bone necrosis, all those come out of the fact that a blood vessel somewhere has been blocked. An example, if the blood vessel that has been blocked is in the eye, retinopathy or blindness as a complication from sickle cell comes in. You have people who acquire secondary blindness, not because they're born with it, but through sickle cell. If the blood vessel that has been blocked is in the brain, this is where strokes come in, and strokes are very, very common among people with sickle cell, just because the blood vessel that got blocked was in the brain. If that blood vessel that gets blocked is in the hand, is where they'll have the pain. Yes, I'll have pain in my hand. If the blood vessel that gets blocked is in the bones, especially this where we have like the hips or other parts of the body, you find that the bones will die out because the bone part can't receive any oxygen, so it will die off. So it's called necrosis. So someone who was born, someone will become physically disabled because of that. So that's one of the things we try to make people understand, the effects that it would have.
Sharifu is well aware of the scope of the challenge in changing people's perceptions about sickle cell disease. He has readily used himself as an example of what someone with the disease can achieve. He also knows that using technology and forming partnerships on both the local and national level are critical to changing minds and changing policies.
So, how do we execute awareness about sickle cell disease? So, we execute awareness in several forms. The first form is to have a person like myself who has sickle cell share his story about how he has lived with sickle cell, how it has affected his life, and in a way, people will probably feel connected with the person and see the need to do something about the change for sickle cell. The other aspect, in terms of how we do actually execute the awareness, so we work with local communities. An example: this can be a school, this a church. When I say church, I talk about a worship place. This can be for Muslims, Christian, or whatever denomination, because we because we'll know that we'll find several people there, and people who are going to get married obviously go through such institutions back home. So, still in addition, we work with local leaders. Local leaders, why? Because they're the leaders in a certain area. They can be able to call up people and people can come. Then when you call up people, the aspect is still, be it in a school, be it at the church, be it in the market. It's all about being able to meet the people who we can now tell the information about sickle cell. So in a way, the best way to execute awareness is to meet the person, probably be one-on-one, or to meet them in a group, but in person, to meet them in person. That's one of the best ways that we are trying to execute the awareness. Yes, through this age of technology, we're also trying to use social media, because there's so many people on social media, so we try to share stories, post these things, facts about sickle cell, facts, how it has affected people's lives. We try to share that on social media as well, in a way to capture people who are on social media. So that's also another aspect of making sure we can engage the people who are on social media. So in a way, those are some of the ways through which we execute sickle cell awareness. For any grassroots organization, one of the key things that we have to always have are partners, to make sure that what we do can be sustained, or to make sure that what we do can have the impact that we need it to have. So governments, like I say, in Uganda, we have what we call the local governments, who starts from the LC1 or the local council 1. Local governments are part of the biggest stakeholders we work with, because local governments are the governments that govern the markets, the places where people actually are, excluding the overall the central government. But you still as a non-profit, or anyone who's involved in grassroots advocacy, it's important you need to engage the central government as well, because you need policy to be able to support whatever you're doing. Because so far right now, like an example in Uganda, this year we have started talking about how through the effort we had with the kingdom, now it has gone to the legislative house. Members of the house are asking, do we have a policy on sickle cell? What are we going to do about sickle cell? Because of the awareness that it has been brought about. So steps have been taken now to lay framework for putting in place a national policy for sickle cell disease, which would involve people testing before marriage. That would be a big game changer, because when we go in the communities, we tell them, no, before marriage, take the sickle cell test. If you can't afford it, probably go to the nearest hospital or come to our offices. So you need the central government for the policy to back up what you're doing, which will in a way bring up more sustained and impactful meaning of the work that you do. In Uganda, we are hoping to reach a time where we are aspiring to reach a time that someone who has sickle cell will not feel shy to say it. Will be comfortable in any place, whether in a church, whether before marriage, whether at the workplace, to say, yes, I have sickle cell, and people will hug them and feel comfortable about them. That's our biggest aspirations as a foundation.
Sharifu is also finding help from the YALI Network and other Mandela Washington Fellows. And we asked him what advice he has for YALI Network members who are also working to push back against ignorance, intolerance, and stigma.
One of the good things that happened through the network, other fellows who don't have sickle cell have been putting me through to people they know back home who are running non-profit for sickle cell. An example of Togo, in Ghana, in Congo, Brazzaville. All the fellows that I was able to make connection with are giving my contact to people who they know who are running sickle cell non-profits. So in a way, this has strengthened the collaboration that we shall have, the YALI network, has offered a platform to strengthen the collaboration for sickle cell awareness, because now I can share what I'm doing with someone in Togo. How can they learn from me? How do they, even the literature I have, because if I have more literature for sickle cell, I can always give them the literature, they can print and just translate. It saves a lot of time and money for someone to make a whole new literature of something which is already available. So the YALI network has provided this avenue to grow the network for advocates or people who are involved in sickle cell work in Africa. I think the biggest way to have an impact is to include people who are deeply affected or deeply touched by whatever you are passionate about. This in a way because you would get very honest feedback. You would get very honest opinions about what you're doing and what you hope to do, because someone is telling you is one who's concerned. It's not like they're there for anything, but they're there because they feel that something has to be done to change their lives or to change the lives of other people like them who are in such a situation. So inclusion is very part. And also another thing which I also probably is a big step, you have to build on partnerships. Take every avenue to bring people on board. Are they community members, local businesses, local organizations? Just partner with as many people as you can, because through the partnership, you'll be able to grow the ripple effect. You'll be able to make sure what you're doing can get to more people, because the partnership the collaboration will offer platform to share the small resources that you have through collaboration to achieve more. So partnerships also another thing. When you start, seek for partnerships. Partner with everyone, with anyone, with whoever you think will be able to bring something to the table. Is it moral? Is it spiritual? Is it financial? Whoever it is, in a way, this will get you going where you want to get. I think what advice do I have for other YALI members who are passionate about something in their community? The advice is you have to start somewhere. Like I shared, it was a briefcase organization before we got someone to donate to us office space. So it means we had started even when we had no office, basically a briefcase, my bag and the email. So you have to start somewhere. It's all about starting. Don't worry that I don't have any resource. I know no one. I have no idea. But if you're passionate about anything, just start up. Just start. Even if you're one person, along the way you'll build and be able to grow it. You just have to start. That's the biggest advice I have for other YALI network members who are passionate about things in their community. Just start. Do not wait for anything. Just start.
Sharifu is hopeful that with awareness, knowledge, communication, and access to credible information, more people will come to understand that those living with sickle cell disease have both the ability and the right to be full members of their communities. Thank you for tuning into another YALI Voices podcast, and a special thank you to Sharifu for his commitment to making his community and the world a better place. Be sure to share your thoughts on this podcast and other important topics on the YALI Network Facebook page at facebook.com/YALI Network. Come back for more inspiring stories from young African leaders on the YALI Voices Podcast. Join the YALI Network at yali.state.gov and be a part of something bigger. Our theme music is Ego Happen by Grace Jerry and is produced by the Presidential Precinct. The YALI Voices Podcast is brought to you by the U.S. Department of State and is a part of the Young African Leaders Initiative, which is funded by the U.S. government. Thanks for listening.